just so everyone knows they're in the right place here.
Perfect.
Good.
All right.
So one thing about Teams that I find challenging is that the initials they put in the little circles aren't always intuitive to me to know who they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's well, especially if people have the same initials, it's just always
Sure.
things can get a little off. So we need.
There is an option to add your photo to your little bubble.
Oh, wow.
But that's harder to do for guests.
Okay.
Hello.
Hey, Rick. Good morning. You're in the TIFA meeting.
Can everyone hear me? Okay,
I can hear you.
Great. The darn DDA meeting took so long. That's why I'm late.
Well, we're still making sure everybody's connecting, so we haven't really started yet, Rick.
No, that was for Tim.
Oh.
I think I told you and Sean there's no way we'd go past 9:30 with that meeting. So
I know, right?
Yeah.
I do recall something like that, Tim.
We always find a way.
Exactly.
Tim forgot that Jim was going to be there.
Hey, Jim, welcome.
Hey, we always welcome discussion.
Yeah, that was all good discussion.
Yeah, the fact we can do it virtually is still kind of amazing.
It was way more organized than I thought it'd be.
Yeah, people are starting to adapt to this new normal for meetings.
Yeah, I think so. I don't like it though. I like face to face.
Yeah, it's still not.
I know.
Not anywhere close to the in person. That's for sure.
Yeah, I agree, Rick. Face to face is much better. So did we get any regrets that couldn't join the meeting? Do you know?
I didn't see any. Amanda, did you get any?
No, I did not. Not everyone accepted, but I did not get any regrets.
Okay.
It does look like we have a quorum. We
Okay.
need 6. I might. Oh, Ileana looks like is leaving. We should still be at 6. Maybe we give it 1 or 2 more minutes, and then Sean, if you're up for it, we could have Amanda do a roll call to confirm our quorum.
That'd be great. Hi, Eliana. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'd just like to disclose, there's a rumor going around being spread by my children that at these morning meetings, I just throw a sport coat on, but that I still have my pajama bottoms on. That's not true. I'd just like to state that publicly.
Thank you, Commissioner Talon.
We'll take your word for that.
So who do you have with you there, Eliana?
This is Miles.
Hi, Miles. Good morning.
Welcome to the TIFA.
And a rice cake.
Yeah.
So Sean, I think we are good.
Okay,
We have 7. It's it's almost 10 after. So I think if you were up for it, I think we could go ahead and get started.
all right, then I'll call the meeting to order, and Amanda, if you would call for a roll call, that'd be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And just a quick reminder, if you are not speaking, to mute your mic. Also, public comment will be held at the end, and feel free to use the chat feature to post comments, questions, anything that you'd like to bring attention to during the meeting and without vocally. If I could just have you state yes, you're here when I go through the list. Sean?
Yes, I'm here.
Jim Baldwin?
Yes.
What? So there's
Which
2
one?
Jims. I'll do it in this order. Jim Baldwin? It's not. Okay. Mayor Bliss?
Yes.
Eliana?
Yes.
Deidre? She on? KM?
Yes.
Jane? She on? All right. Carl? Mark?
Yes.
Jim Talon?
Yes.
Rick? Thought he was on. Rick, are you muted? Okay.
I see him there.
Okay.
I know.
There
Sorry.
All right. There we are. All right, Rick, you're here.
Yes, I was muted, and yes, I'm here. Sorry.
All right.
So we have a quorum, right?
We do.
Great. Thank you all for coming. This is my first public meeting held on Teams. It feels really strange, but everything feels really strange right now. So thank you for joining on your computers and from your homes. I appreciate that. And we'll call the meeting to order. The first item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from March 11, 2020. And that information was sent out in the packet for the meeting. So I hope everyone has had an opportunity to review the minutes. And I would entertain a motion to approve them and support.
This is KM. I move approval of the minutes of March 11.
This is Rick. I will second.
Thank you for that. So I will then ask if there are any questions or any clarifications from the minutes that you saw.
And then I'll just go through do another roll call for if you approve or not for the minutes. Sean?
Approve.
Jim Baldwin, are you on yet? Mayor Bliss?
Yes.
Eliana?
Yes.
Deidre? KM, I have you as your motion. Jane or Carl? Mark?
Yes.
Jim Talon?
Yes.
And Rick, I had you as support.
All right, thank you. The next item on our agenda is the FY 2021 budget presentation. And Tim, I think you are going to present that, right?
Yes, I will.
And you'll do it on the screen? You're sharing your screen?
We did not have a presentation.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
What I intended to do was simply to walk through the items in the packet. So hopefully
Perfect.
we'll have those. What we found is that when we're looking at spreadsheets on a shared screen that's often a laptop, it's sometimes it's difficult to make out the numbers. So
Okay, that's fair. Thank you. Sorry.
yep, no problem. Thanks for clarifying, and good morning, everyone. Hope you are all safe and healthy. Thanks, as Sean mentioned, for joining us. The primary item for today was review and a recommendation of the FY21 Monroe North TIFA budget to the City Commission for consideration. So just a reminder on the schedule. After our discussion this morning, if you approve it and when you make a recommendation, we would be at the City Commission on April 28th, presenting TIFA, the DDA, as well as the Downtown Improvement District budgets for the upcoming fiscal year that would begin July 1. So as in years past, we begin our budget review and discussions in January with our alliances and some of our other community partners to identify priorities. And given that we are in year 5 of GR4, I think we have some pretty clear direction about what we are trying to do. We do know, obviously, that the world has changed quite a bit in the past just 4 weeks, let alone the last 24 hours. So we've tried to build in a little bit of flexibility within this budget. I know particularly last year, one of the big items we talked about was identifying projects so that we could spend our fund balance. So we still have a relatively healthy fund balance for our overall budget. You'll see going into this fiscal year, we estimated at about 1.9 million to going into FY21. And after all the expenditures, we're estimating, again, these are estimates, that we'd end the year around 1.4 million. Our hope is that as more funding comes online from our federal, state, and local partners, as we look to get people back to work, as construction hopefully ramps back up, ideally this year, if not, then into 21, that we would then have the opportunity to look at some of our resources in the TIFA to help aid in some of those efforts. And so I only offer that to say that we're still early in this crisis and we don't know exactly what's going to be needed, but we hope through DDA, TIFA, and the other funds that DGRA helps manage that we can be really active in that recovery effort when the time comes. That being said, I'll jump into some of the projects that we have accounted for, and then happy to just take any questions or comments that you might have. So again, we organize our budget around the GR Forward goals. So for goal 1, we are looking at river revitalization and creating that connected river corridor. And so the funding for this year that we've identified is to aid in the implementation of recommendations from our ongoing governance discussions. So you may all recall that our team, and specifically Andy Guy, has been managing a process with a consultant team that is looking at what is going to be needed to properly manage and fund the river corridor, not just the in-water activities, but also on the banks as the Whitewater project gets going. So that process is set to wrap here in the late spring or early summer, depending on when we can get everyone back together. And so this money is just to help carry that process along. We do expect that we're going to need to do some additional analysis coming out of this to look at either a new organization and or some sort of new funding authority. And so we're going to want to explore those things further with our partners. We're also going to be looking at, importantly this year, doing some activation and engagement activities. And so this money would help support that as well. So that's really our focus for goal 1 for the coming year. You will notice in the two coming fiscal years, so that'd be FY22 and FY23, we do have a placeholder in for supporting the river restoration. The expectation is that project would be starting still in FY22. And so we have that in there as a placeholder. We continue to collaborate closely with Whitewater. And so as their schedule becomes more solidified, we'll of course respond accordingly. But that's what we have in mind for goal 1 this coming year. How about I'll go through everything and then we can just take questions as you guys are noting them through my overview. Jumping down to goal 2 for some of the enhancement grants and infrastructure improvements. So the enhancement grants is our placeholder for any businesses or rehabilitation projects that may need to occur in the district. The Downtown Enhancement Grant Program is really focused on public realm activation and improvements. So in the past, we've used the funding there to support parklets, outdoor infrastructure, really just things that help support that we match a business on. And so if a business can typically come up with 50% of their project costs on eligible activities, the TIFA then can step in and also help support that. So we use a placeholder there. We don't have any projects currently identified, but the hope is that that we would be able to deploy that funding this year. And then on the infrastructure improvements, this is really to help support the continued growth of our tree canopy in the larger downtown neighborhood, but specifically in the TIFA. And so we work with Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, as well as the city forester, to identify areas in the district that are suitable and capable of supporting the urban tree canopy. And we do, based on some analysis by Friends of Grand Rapids Parks, think that we can use that funding again this year. Jumping down then to goal 3 and thinking about our 21st century mobility strategy. Been doing a lot of work with the city and Mobile GR around bicycle infrastructure improvements. And then also we are finishing up a report and analysis with disability advocates and Common Notice on downtown accessibility. So we have funding there to do retrofits and improvements in the district to create universal accessibility throughout. And so that report was scheduled to be done this month. We're not sure if the schedule will slide till May or June, but we will have that information here in the next couple months, and we can use that to deploy funding to make improvements in the neighborhood. In addition, one of the larger line items we have set aside this year is to help support some of the road work and reconstruction that is happening in the district. So Mason and Ottawa, as well as the Monroe Coldbrook stretch of road where kind of Monroe curves to the east, those are all scheduled to begin in FY20. And so we're working with the city to identify opportunities for improvements in those projects, particularly in public realm investments. On the Coldbrook Monroe piece, some of you may recall and been involved in discussions prior around that becoming a roundabout to help with traffic flow. That is still being looked at and is something that's being considered through the design process. And so we'll be working with the city on that to understand what's feasible. But again, our resources are really toward public realm improvements and not necessarily for what the city funds through Vital Streets and some of their other road funding mechanisms. So continue to work on design of those projects. The Women's Way alley improvements, at our last meeting, you approved funding for that. What's shown here is potentially funding that would roll over into FY21. We hope that all the money would get spent by the end of this fiscal year, but if not, we do have a little bit of a rollover into FY21, and then a little bit of a cushion if there's other alleyway improvements that needed to occur to support that project. And then the transit improvements, this is the share of dash infrastructure as well as the dash. So I guess for shelters as well as the dash vehicles. So when I say infrastructure, we're talking about both of those things, and this is the TIFA share of the larger DGRI contribution to continuing to support the dash service. And then lastly, goal 5, which is public space improvements and programming. Last month we approved funding for Canal Street Park improvements to be undertaken this year. We don't expect that we would get any bills for that before July 1. And so what you're seeing for FY21 is a rollover of that $120,000 in addition to what we hope would be some of the phase 2 work that Mark Miller walked you through. So phase 1 is really around the furniture. Phase 2 is going to be looking more at some of the restrooms and playground. And that work would also carry on into FY23. And so we're providing funding in the line item for that to support the work and fund the work that we've already approved, but then in consideration of future phases. Then the last urban rec line item here is just for additional infrastructure improvements in the public right-of-way and in the Canal Street Park that may come online. So again, infrastructure support and improvements in public spaces, and particularly to support outdoor recreation and utilization of our public spaces in Monroe North. So those are some of the highlights. In your packet was not only the budget and line items, but also a budget narrative to accompany that and give you a little more detail on some of these items. But with that, I would be happy to take any questions or hear any discussion.
And Tim, this is Sean. Just for clarification, we are making the recommendation to the commission for FY 2021, where we have sort of the forecast for the following 4 years. That's just for information purposes, correct? And to keep sort of line of sight on what's coming.
Yeah, great clarification, Sean. Yeah, so you're recommending just the FY21 budget. The 5-year forecast out to FY25 is simply for information.
Great, thank you.
This is Rick Wynn. I would move approval.
Support. This is Jane.
Thank you.
Okay.
Is there any other discussion about the budget or questions from anyone? If not, then Amanda, if you could call for the roll call.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sean?
Yep, support.
Jim Baldwin, are you on yet? I don't think he was able. Mayor Bliss?
Yes.
This is Jim Baldwin. I support.
Oh, great. Welcome, Jim. Thank you. Eliana?
Yes.
Deidre?
Yes.
KM?
Yes.
Jane, you supported. Carl? You on? Mark?
Yes.
Jim Talon?
Yes.
And Rick?
I made the motion.
And you motioned. Great. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. Tim, I know it's not on our agenda, but was Jana going to provide a financial update? The only reason I ask is because I caught the tail end of the DDA and I didn't know. Then I left to come to this meeting and I didn't want to leave her out if she was planning to do so.
Yep, no, I appreciate that. We did not have financials for this month. We would have them for our next gathering when that's set. So
okay, thank you, Tim.
Yep, thanks for asking.
So the next item is your report. If you would please report.
Yes, I'd be happy to. Thanks. I guess to start with, a couple of things I'll point out that aren't in the TIFA budget, but that are adjacent and might be of interest to board members, is we are continuing to work through the DDA and DGRI on the switchback, what we call switchback park funding. So that's the connection down from the Belknap Hill to Division Avenue. And so that's just outside of the TIFA boundary, but nonetheless, we think it helps create an important connection as the neighborhoods both in Belknap and Monroe grow. And so we continue to work on that design, and we have funding in the DDA budget that was just approved to work on that. Related, the Division Avenue bike lane is slated to get some more permanent improvements as we look to continue to add bicycling infrastructure into the downtown district. One of the things we'll also be looking at is how we and the city could connect that north of Leonard up to the North Quarter area along Plainfield. And so that's part of what we'll be analyzing. And again, just outside of the TIFA's boundaries, so no financial support, but we do think those connections are important to some of the nearby and adjacent neighborhoods. And then lastly, on the riverfront, there's a lot of conversations around Coldbrook right now, and the city is doing the decommissioning of that Coldbrook water site. And so we do expect that in the future, still maybe a couple years down the road, but that becomes a development site potentially for a community center, as was discussed in the River for All. But we continue to participate and monitor those discussions. Again, as the district changes, we want to make sure that we're advocating for the things that the TIFA and the DGRI support. So those are a couple of nearby projects that I thought might be of interest for you all. Jumping into some of just the organizational activities, obviously most of our time is right now being devoted to participating in COVID relief and recovery conversations. And so for us, that has a few different implications. I guess first is related to our DGRI operations. So we are, of course, all working virtually and remotely. And as you are all doing right now, our boards and alliances are also continuing to meet virtually. In terms of our programming, what we've really done is deploy our downtown ambassadors and clean team to really be focused on sanitizing, as well as just making sure the infrastructure stays as clean as possible. And so from the operations perspective, we've seen kind of an immediate impact of some of this, as you all have as well. But we're meeting virtually, and we're making sure that our teams that are out on the streets are really focused on helping to sanitize and clean the district. On a projects program kind of perspective, there's a couple of infrastructure projects that are still happening in downtown, none in the TIFA district. However, the Division Avenue project, so between Cherry and Wealthy, is underway, and then the Van Andel Arena Plaza still continues work. That is really because those are classified as critical infrastructure, and so that work is able to continue. On the development side, the MSU project at Monroe in Michigan, as I'm sure you've all seen, is still happening, as well as the GVSU building up on Michigan Street. Again, those are classified as critical infrastructure. All other development projects, private development projects in downtown, have been stalled, and so we'll, those developers and construction contractors monitor the executive orders closely, but as of now, that work has all stopped. I guess the other thing I just wanted to highlight and related to our efforts during this time is we are collaborating really closely with a number of our economic development partner organizations around identifying opportunities for business support. And then, as I mentioned, just thinking about economic recovery. And so when we're all able to congregate and meet again, thinking about what events we want to help support and produce so that we're driving business to our small businesses and retailers in downtown. And so those are a lot of the discussions that we're currently having, and just trying to offer our resources, both financial and staff hours, to where they are most useful. And I think with that, I'd be happy to have any further discussion or take any questions that the board might have.
So Sean, this is not on Tim's commentary, but at the DDA, we formed a committee to look at this fund balance goal, which is at the bottom of our budgets. These numbers seem a little meaningless based on, I guess, Tim, this is what the city uses as a guideline, but particularly on these smaller funds like the DDA's non-tax fund, and this one in particular, we might want to form a committee to come up with a number that we're comfortable, instructing staff that this would be our minimum fund balance moving forward, just to protect the integrity, I guess, of the funds. So I don't know if you agree with that, or because this fund balance goal in a couple of years is like 70 grand. I don't think we want to spend our way down to that balance. So unless people disagree, but.
Rick, I appreciate that suggestion. So you convened a smaller committee. Did you request participation from the group? Is that how you formed it?
Yeah, I did. Kay
Okay.
volunteered.
She did. Oh. Well, I think that's a good idea, and I would ask the group if anyone is willing to participate in a committee to look at the fund balance and make a recommendation to this group for a minimum amount that we would keep. I would certainly participate in that. So if there's anyone else, we can pull that group together.
I'd be happy to.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
And Rick, maybe the way to do this, because both you and KM volunteered to be on that committee, and you also served on the TIFA. So maybe we combine those groups to have just sort of a larger discussion. So we could, I think with the TIFA, we could have Sean and one more and still not have a quorum, if there's interest. Otherwise, the three of you could represent the TIFA's interests.
Okay, I'm okay
All right.
with that.
Thank you.
This is KM. I think that's a good suggestion to combine the efforts. Although I think there are different dimensions to the two entities, so we'll need to take that into consideration as we have our discussion, but I'm happy to participate.
Thank you. So Rick, I don't know if you can see the chat. If you can see the chat from Jane, her question is it a percentage recommendation? Is that what you talked about at the DDA, or was it, is that what the group is convening to make a recommendation?
Yeah,
and base it?
Yeah, we didn't discuss what the formula might be or change, or just that we should study it more closely. Off the top of my head, I don't think it would represent a percentage, but I think, we need to look at it and come up with something that's a little more realistic.
Yeah, thank you.
It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy if we're going to do percentage of expenses, because as you reduce your expenses, you reduce the fund balance requirements. So it's almost like it doesn't make sense to me based on what it is today, but it doesn't mean it can't be something similar.
Okay. Well, if the group has recommendations, feel free to, share them. But Rick and KM and I, along with Tim, will come back to the group with our recommendation. So I appreciate that. I appreciate you bringing that up, Rick.
Okay.
So the next item on our agenda is public comment. So this is a public meeting. And if we do have a public that would like to make a comment, if you could please state your name. It's not required, but we'd like to know who you are because we can't see you through the software. So please feel free to state your name and make a comment. All right. I'm making the assumption that there wasn't any or there were technical difficulties, but the final agenda item is board member discussion. Is there any discussion from the board members? All right, hearing none. Feel free to interrupt me if you have some, but I want to thank you all for joining in this unusual way, joining our meeting, for your commitment to the Monroe North TIFA, and just challenge you to today and the coming days through this stay-at-home order and the challenges that we're dealing with, to try to find something to be grateful for each day, and it's helping me to maintain a better perspective. So there's always something we can be grateful for, and I would challenge you to look for that. So thank you all for coming, and the meeting's adjourned.
Thank you, Sean. Great meeting.
Thanks, Sean.
Thanks, Sean.
Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.